Incredibly exciting moments at Thomas and Mack this weekend. I think my favorite may have been the sudden death overtime, but still, Kevin Durant dominated the conversation at Summer League. And with so many questions flying around, it's time to parse out what we know, what we think, and then what we want to happen with Kevin Durant. So I want to start with what we know, and let's start with the man there's no one who knows more than him, who is more plugged in the NBA. It's senior insider Adrian Woj. And Woj, you were in Vegas along with the entire NBA world. What's the latest with Kevin Durant?
And Malika, the Nets asking price for Kevin Durant remains steep, and they're trying to await teams and trying to get teams to meet that price, and that's certainly multiple draft picks, all-star level players. Listen, they want a return, that speaks to the stature of who Kevin Durant is, where he is in his career. 34 years old, a player, with 4 years left on his contract. They don't have to be in a rush to do a deal. They do have time on their side, especially because of the time of the year this is. And again, a player with 4 years left on his deal. And Sean Marks came out to Vegas with the intent of talking with other team executives about Kevin Durant. That's been going on. But the Nets asking price, certainly, it is steep, and it is, I think, going to allow this to be a process that goes on, because there's really no motivation for the Nets to rush into a deal or to move quickly on a deal unless it's something they consider, something of a monumental return for Durant.
So general manager Sean Marks is out in Las Vegas, and so is Kyrie Irving. He was there for a couple of days. We watched him take in a few games. What more can you tell us about where things stand with him?
Yeah, Brooklyn's really focused on Kevin Durant and trying to figure out if there's a deal to be had for him in the marketplace. And I think Kyrie Irving is on the back burner of that. There were conversations with the Lakers last week. I'm told that that's not continued. I think both sides know where they stand. And I think for the Nets, getting a clear indication of what the future looks like with Kevin Durant before they make any decision on how Kyrie Irving fits into that. That's the sense other teams have with the situation, and I think it's the sense of what the Nets are doing. So I think their focus with the Nets right now is figuring out, is there a deal out there for Kevin Durant? And I think Kyrie Irving is secondary to that, and I think his future may be, decided off of how the Nets operate and the kind of decisions they make around KD.
Woj, thank you so much for that. Enjoy the rest of Summer League and Las Vegas if you can. So that's exactly what we know. And I want to shift a little bit to what we think, but we just heard something very interesting from Woj. We had talked in the past about whether or not we could have seen Kyrie as the first domino to fall instead of Kevin Durant, and now it seems that that is the inverse. So I do want to bring in someone who's able to prognosticate not only what's going on in Utah, but the entire league. It's senior writer Brian Windhorst. And Brian, based on what you are hearing, what do you think is going to happen with Kevin Durant and Kyrie here?
Yeah, we're probably into a stalemate here, Malika. It's not unusual from what we've seen in other star trades in other years. The Kawhi Leonard trade to Toronto is an example of this. Dwight Howard about a decade ago with something that didn't happen to Los Angeles until August, where their asking price and the market value there's a delta in between, and it takes an event in some cases to make those things fall together. In this case, what we might watch for is any communication from Kevin Durant himself about if he were to come out and say his feelings about potentially returning to the Nets, for example, which is something that hasn't been ruled off the table if the Nets can't find a deal that they like. Or maybe a comment about what teams he may or may not have interest in. But that may not happen at all. And nothing may happen for a while. There may be a decision by the Nets at some point to reduce what they're looking for. Yeah. But they don't have to do that. Certainly shouldn't do that this early in the process. So my guess is we're going to be stuck here for a while until something else comes in and changes the situation.
Stuck watching, waiting, and listening to see what happens with Kevin Durant and with Kyrie Irving here. Thanks, Brian. Please do not go too far because we're going to get into so much more here on NBA Today. But I also want to know what we want to happen. And this is sort of threefold because I imagine what Kevin Durant wants, what the Brooklyn Net wants, and what fans want, it could potentially be different. But those first two, they need to line up in order for us to see a trade. So What should we want to happen, Kendrick Perkins?
Well, what I want to happen is I want Kevin Durant to go to the Phoenix Suns and play alongside Devin Booker and CP3 and be coached by Monty Williams. I want Kyrie Irving playing alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Again, when Kyrie Irving played alongside LeBron James in the playoffs, their record was 39-13. Kyrie Irving was at his stage of his career where he was the most consistent for us playing at an elite level. Now, I say that to say this, Malika. We are still talking about Kevin Durant. Giannis and Dwight Howard, at the time that they got traded, was nowhere in the stratosphere of Kevin Durant. So what this is telling me is, again, what I said a week ago to you, is that teams are reluctant to give up their young superstars. And now I'm starting to question, what is the real value of a 34-year-old Kevin Durant and how he's viewed throughout the NBA? I always use this analogy. It's a difference, but it's a difference between being popular and powerful. Being powerful means you move the needle and you move the needle fast. Right now, Kevin Durant don't look powerful.
Well, we know you mentioned the Phoenix Suns, that they are one of the preferred landing spots for Kevin Durant, but they also have a domino that needs to fall, and it's DeAndre Ayton, right? So, Brian, how is his future playing a role in all of this?
Yeah, so he's really been in this restricted free agency limbo, Malika, which we sometimes see for players in this position. And the reason this is complicating is because as a member of the Phoenix Suns, as they're having potential discussions with the Nets about Kevin Durant, his free agency was sort of tied up in it. And while the Nets may not necessarily want to sign and trade for DeAndre Ayton, a potential trade for DeAndre Ayton for other pieces could potentially have been involved in a Durant deal. But that may be running out of time on that because the Indiana Pacers over the weekend finalized their trade with Malcolm Brogdon with the Boston Celtics. That opened up a bunch of salary cap space. Now, they're not quite at the max salary cap space that DeAndre Ayton has been known to want. But the Pacers have met with Ayton. They have interest in Ayton. And they have had some discussions progressing towards potentially an offer sheet with DeAndre Ayton. And the whole league is keeping an eye on that to see if the Pacers actually go ahead and give the offer sheet, because they're an organization that typically doesn't give out offer sheets. And two, if that happens, whether or not the Suns would match. But either way on that, in the event of an offer sheet, he can't be traded. He can't be traded by the Suns. He can't be traded by the Pacers until January 15th. It would essentially take him out of this process altogether. And if the Suns end up matching and keeping him, having him on their books for whatever that salary would be, would potentially be a factor in how much they could trade for Kevin Durant in some sort of deal.
Perk, how do you digest all this?
How I digest food. Real fast. So, but look, here's the question. Here's the question that I have, that I'm being serious. At what point, though, right, as the season starts to come, like for us getting closer to training camp, and say that a deal has not been made and KD hasn't been traded yet, when are teams going to start deciding to say, you know what, we got to worry about now and worry about what's going on in our organization and start actually not even entertaining the Brooklyn Nets as far as Kevin Durant? Like, I believe it's going to come a point. So, Malika, I'm asking you and Brian, do y'all have like an idea, or can y'all help me out with that? Because if I'm in the front office, sooner or later I'm going to say, you know what, I got to worry about what I'm going to do with this squad right now. Okay,
Sure.
I put an offer out there, Brooklyn didn't want it. I got to move forward.
Well, I think that, Brian, and you can speak to this as well, but being out in Las Vegas for a couple of days, the sense that I got is it would happen in weeks, or we would be going back to potentially training camp and seeing some familiar faces like Kevin Durant in a Brooklyn Nets uniform. But when the season starts and folks see how their teams are shaping up, what's missing and what's not, then you can see more movement. And that's whether it's with someone like Kevin Durant or with someone else. Brian, what's your sense there?
It's just so unusual, Malika, to have a star player with 4 years on his contract ask for this type of trade. And I know we saw this last year with Ben Simmons, but this is even a different level. The players that we have seen ask for trades in the past, I mentioned Kawhi Leonard earlier, have had 1 year or maybe 1 year and a little bit extra on their contract. And that changes the leverage play. That is something that we are a little bit in uncharted territory. And that is why the Nets, and it's justifiable, are asking for a price here. But the offers are coming in here.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know where that's going to, there's no roadmap right now to see where that's going to go.
But Brian, if memory serves, with Kawhi, the Raptors, they came in with an offer. It wasn't necessarily taken up immediately. There was some time that passed. They saw the rest of the offers that came in. The Raptors offer, it didn't change. It was good, don't get me wrong, involving a DeMar DeRozan, someone who, number one, was beloved by the organization and is also an excellent player. But maybe it wasn't initially what they had in mind. And then a couple of months later, once sort of surveying the landscape, it was like, okay, now we can get this deal done.
Malika, that is exactly right.
This is what I gotta say.
We know that Toronto is one of the teams that is bidding in here. And if Toronto was able to hold their price and end up getting Kawhi Leonard, why wouldn't they enter this? Why wouldn't Masai Ujiri wonder if he's got the best offer, maybe, if they wouldn't hold their price and maybe that would come down for Kevin Durant? Those are certainly positions that are easier to take in mid-July than in mid-August or even mid-September.
Perk?
I know I keep saying this and I'm sounding like a broken record, but we are talking about Kevin Durant. Like, I still can't, like, this doesn't make sense to me. Kevin Durant is on the market. Kevin Durant is available.
Yeah.
Like, what's Kevin Durant?
But teams are hesitant to give up some of their young stars, but Kevin also wants to play with those young stars. So that's the balance here, Perk, and we've talked about it since Kevin Durant requested that trade a week and change ago, is that the balance is that, yes, it's Kevin Durant, but if a team is to give up all of those young stars and all of those young assets, what is left to come back to? And that's what we're going to continue to keep tabs on. Coming up.